Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the latest installment of our monthly threat webinar series. My name is Dan Gittis. I am the director of our Threat Intelligence and Detection Engineering, or TIDE team here at UltraViolet. And we have a very exciting topic today, at least in my opinion. This month, we are looking at the AI threat landscape and separating what the real threats are versus what is media hype. I do want to let you all know beforehand, this is a recorded session. None of you are on camera, none of your names are visible, but if for any reason you're uncomfortable with being on a recorded session, we would ask that you drop now. We can go to the next slide. On our agenda for today, we'll start with our usual overview of the Tide team. Then we will take a look at how AI threats have evolved over the last 5 years. From there, we'll move into the current AI threat landscape, and some relevant case studies, followed by a look at Anthropic's Mythos tool. We'll wrap up with a look forward, an overview of best practices, and some key takeaways. And we'll also have a question and answer session at the end. So I'd kindly ask that you hold all questions until then. Now, questions aside, we do have a poll that we're going to run. I'm admittedly not entirely sure if I'll need to end it before we continue, so we'll all find out together, but you should have seen that pop up now. And Katie, let's try going to the next slide. We'll see if it stays up. Nice. All right, so while we leave that poll up, if you are not familiar with the Tide team, our primary focus is threat intelligence and detection engineering, as our name suggests. You may be familiar with these webinars as well as our weekly and quarterly reports, but Tide works diligently behind the scenes to ensure our customers are protected from the latest cyber threats. We are continuously enabling threat detections and threat hunts to support ultraviolet clients and internal teams, and we provide SOC analysts with the threat intelligence and context needed to respond quickly and effectively to threats. We're always happy to interface with our clients to provide insights on the threat landscape and detection strategies, and we support ultraviolet offensive security engagements by informing our famous Purple Team exercises with comprehensive, reliable threat intel. Next slide. All right, so transitioning into our content, let's first look at AI cyber threats over the last 5 years. So we first saw capable public LLMs, it's large language models, emerging in 2021, with the major breakthrough coming in the form of ChatGPT in November 2022. This provided mass access to generative AI and deteriorated the barrier for entry for cyber threat actors almost immediately. Now, as an aside, you'll hear myself and very likely many others across the security industry using the phrase lowering the barrier for entry when discussing AI threats. Anyways, by mid 2023, malicious versions of LLM tools began to appear on dark web forums and marketplaces. Tools like WormGPT serve as an unrestricted AI model that help threat actors abuse the capabilities of AI. For example, WormGPT lets threat actors generate convincing phishing emails, write functional malware scripts, and more effectively exploit vulnerabilities by offering guidance. You can think of this as the evil twin of ChatGPT or Claude, if you will. Now, as we rolled into 2024, state-sponsored actors were found to be incorporating LLMs into their operations. This likely started before 2024, but Microsoft's reporting provided significant insight into some early capabilities. According to Microsoft, state-sponsored actors from Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran were using AI tools to help with scripting, phishing, reconnaissance, vulnerability research, and detection evasion. By August 2025, AI entered a new phase, operationalization. This includes several of our case studies that we'll discuss later: vibe hacking, AI-enabled espionage, and AI-embedded malware. This really demonstrates how, in the 18 months between February 2024 and August 2025, threat actors managed to take AI from phishing support to operational use, including exceedingly quick and, at times, automated portions of the infection chain. Next slide. In the modern threat landscape, we can effectively break down AI threats into three categories: accelerator or acceleration, embedded, and agentic. Accelerator is the easiest and most common way for threat actors to leverage AI. In this sense, they're using AI very much like the everyday person uses it. It makes life easier and more effective, and it lowers the barrier for entry, there's that phrase, for threat actors. What it crucially does not do is remove the necessity for a physical operator calling the shots. Some examples of AI as an accelerant include non-English speakers using English or using AI to produce English language phishing messages fluently, using AI to adopt the typical tone of someone for business email compromise, general script drafting and debugging, persona generation, data summary, and more. We see AI used in this manner across the entire spectrum of threat actors, from highly sophisticated state-sponsored groups to entry-level actors. Next is embedded AI. In this scenario, we're talking about malware that is embedded with AI. As an example, Google discovered a couple of malware strains with this feature. PromptFlux, for example, called on Gemini post-execution to rewrite its code, and PromptSteal, which was attributed to Russia's APT28, called on the QN 2.5 Coder 32B Instruct LLM to build one-line Windows commands post-compromise. There's other examples as well, such as PromptLuck ransomware, which calls on an LLM to generate and execute scripts at runtime, and Quiet Vault, which relies on an AI prompt to search for potential secrets on the infected device. AI-embedded malware is becoming more common, but it's still very experimental. And the most effective malware families are going to be reserved for sophisticated, well-resourced actors and groups like APT28. Last is agentic AI. Now, this is where there's rightfully fear, but there's also a lot of overhype. So you can think of agentic AI as fully automated, lightning fast infections. We've seen this in the wild, as we'll discuss shortly, but it's very much at the novel stage at this point. I'm not going to give away too much yet because, as I mentioned, we have some good details later on. But this capability currently only exists and does so in a juvenile state for the most sophisticated and well-resourced actors. Next slide. And while we're on the subject, I want to take a look at some overhyped claims and the reality behind them. Claim one, AI tools launch cyber attacks completely on their own. That's not true. Even in the limited instances of agentic AI, there's still a human picking the targets. And overall, the use of AI is mostly an accelerant, like we discussed, not some Terminator style tool that is picking organizations to target and launching attacks on its own. I think we lost our slide, so I can hang on for just a second if needed.
Yes, sorry about that.
No worries.
Computer decided to update.
Katie, while you're getting that up, I can keep going through the claims because I have some notes on them. So, claim two is that AI is inventing brand new attack techniques. There's no evidence of this, at least not yet. Again, AI is giving threat actors the ability to execute techniques faster and more effectively, but it's not reinventing known tactics, techniques, and procedures or TTPs. Claim three, fully autonomous end-to-end attacks are here today. This is a little more ambiguous, but it's still largely untrue. Yes, automated attacks are emerging, but they're still largely experimental. And the one instance we have seen, as we'll get to later, was fairly unreliable. Claim four, every attacker is now supercharged with AI. That is simply not the case. So while many threat actors are adopting AI in some capacity, it's not universal and it's not a supercharge. Again, it accelerates certain elements, but calling it a supercharge is definitely overhype. Uh, and lastly, the fifth claim, essentially that we are doomed and we can't stop these attacks. We are not doomed. While AI tools are the latest evolution in the threat landscape, those of us on the defensive side have all the tools and then some that threat actors do. So when we work together and we leverage these tools properly, we are faster. We can get ahead and we can stay ahead. We can go to the next slide. So, as part of what's real versus what is hype, we need to understand what threats are mature today and what is still emerging but not yet reliable. Things we've lumped into this mature bucket are proven, reliable, and maybe most importantly, are replicable. So this is where most AI-enabled cyber activity lands today. Items like AI-written phishing messages with fluent, grammatically flawless lures that are very popular at the moment. There's also deepfakes, which have emerged as a persistent, well-known threat that often lead to significant financial loss or fraudulent hires. Threat actors can write better malware in less time, and entry-level threat actors can throw their hat into the ring as well. And post-compromise, AI tools are effective at sorting through stolen data and helping set reliable ransom amounts. And when we look at emerging threats, these are elements that we may have already seen in the wild to an extent, but largely only in limited doses. These threats are often prone to errors or are not available to actors at scale. So this includes AI embedded malware, as we discussed, and agentic intrusions. In addition, AI is not yet fully reliable at diminishing the work of an entire campaign to a single operator, nor is it fully capable of accelerated vulnerability research. Many of the models leveraged by threat actors were identifying old, known flaws and labeling them allegedly as 0 days. And I do want to just clarify there, in case that was a little bit confusing. AI models that are fully available to threat actors are not yet reliably identifying new vulnerabilities. So again, while this technology is starting to emerge, it's certainly not here yet in a reliable manner. And now we can get to the next slide, where we will start to bring everything we've been discussing to life with a few case studies. So first is the classic art of deception in the form of deepfakes. One of the most well-known deepfake attacks occurred in January 2024 when threat actors used deepfakes to impersonate the CFO of Arab. Using this fake persona, the attackers convinced an employee to make 15 wire transfers totaling over $25 million. The deepfakes were built from publicly available images of the CFO, and the employee, who was actually skeptical of the original emails they received, felt more comfortable when they got on a call and saw what appeared to be the CFO. Unfortunately for Arab, these funds were never recovered. More recently, North Korean state-sponsored actors Thank you. North Korean state-sponsored actors have made use of deepfakes for their fraudulent IT workers campaign. In these attacks, the threat actors use AI tools to put their faces on stolen IDs, generate resume-style headshots, and mask their voices and appearance in interviews. Some firms assess that a single threat actor can interview for the same role multiple times under different personas, increasing their chance of success. Now, we have an example of some North Korean deepfakes on the left. And why does this matter? Well, we live in a largely remote world these days, and this form of deception has opened the door to a brand new wave of threats. Deepfakes continue to enable financial loss, insider threats, and espionage, all while disguised as legitimate and capable employees. And at the same time, a legitimate and capable employee who doesn't mind showing their alleged face on camera. Next slide. You may have heard of vibe coding. Well, here is the malicious alternative, and that's vibe hacking. And I will preface this with I'm not a big fan of the word hacking, but this is the industry coin phrase, so I will go with it. Vibe hacking first popped onto everyone's radar in August 2025 when Anthropic disrupted a threat actor who was abusing Claude Code for data theft and extortion. The actor targeted at least 17 organizations and threatened to leak their data unless a ransom was paid, which is a very classic extortion attack. The actor targeted healthcare, emergency services, government, and religious organizations and stole an abundance of data, including healthcare information, financial information, and government credentials. Now, as far as how the threat actor abused Claude Code, they relied on it to automate reconnaissance, credential harvesting, network penetration, and with assistance on a number of key decisions like what data to exfiltrate, how to craft a ransom note, and how much money to demand in that ransom note. And there's an example of the ransom note prompt that Anthropic came up with on the right. Notably, the threat actor supplied Claude Code with their preferred TTPs, a prompt file, but this was strictly guided, so Claude was allowed to take some liberties as needed. Well, this shows how Claude Code and other AI tools can effectively be abused to enhance AI attacks. While Anthropic took specific steps after this was revealed to prevent this abuse in the future, there are other tools out there that are available to threat actors that may not have. And we can go to the next slide. Here's the big one. AI-enabled espionage through agentic AI. So a month after Anthropic discovered the previous vibe hacking campaign, they identified a Chinese state-sponsored threat actor abusing Claude Code to run an espionage campaign against approximately 30 organizations. Claude automated about 80 to 90% of the tactical work, including reconnaissance, vulnerability discovery, vulnerability exploitation, lateral movement, credential harvesting, data analysis, and data exfiltration, and did so at physically impossible request rates. Essentially, the threat actor picked the targets and Claude did the rest. The end result was the first documented agentic AI orchestrated espionage campaign, but it wasn't entirely successful. So the threat actors could not reliably gain access to all of their targets, and when they did, Claude often overstated the extent of the data it found or fabricated data, and as mentioned above, it was susceptible to discovering, which I say in quotes, new vulnerabilities that in reality were already known. With that said, while clear operational hurdles exist and pose a reliability issue, this campaign demonstrates what the agentic AI threat and fully automated attack chains look like. And we have an example of the infection chain on the left with the robot logos demonstrating where AI stepped in, and then human logos demonstrating where human interaction was required. Let me go to the next slide. So, along with agentic AI, we discussed AI embedded malware in the earlier slides. Here's a more in-depth look. So, a couple months after Anthropic's discovery of the Chinese agentic AI campaign, researchers from Google identified a number of malware families that were embedded with AI in some capacity. Perhaps most notably was prompt steal, which was attributed to Russia's APT-28. APT-28 deployed prompt steal against live targets in Ukraine. Post-compromise, the malware called an LLM to generate a one-line Windows command, then executed that command. As the threat actors didn't have to embed commands into the malware, the result was a more dynamic tool that was harder to analyze, harder to block, and capable of evolving its behavior and capabilities on the fly. Additionally, Google discovered PromptFlux, a separate experimental malware not attributed to a known threat actor. During the execution phase, PromptFlux relied on a thinking robot module uh, that it called on to prompt an AI tool such as Gemini to rewrite its source code. Now, this allowed PromptFlux to operate as an adaptive, ever-evolving malware that is harder for signature-based detection measures to catch. Ultimately, malware like PromptFlux and PromptSteal are harder to block and analyze due to their ability to evolve on the fly. Capable state-sponsored actors certainly do not lack the resources or capabilities to engage in AI-embedded malware development right now, but long-term, similar malware families could lower the barrier for entry, not just to cyber attacks, but to sophisticated malware that makes it easier for threat actors to achieve their objectives. Next slide. Now, this example is a little bit different because it's one that I built. Now, I said earlier that for the most part, AI serves threat actors as an enhancement tool, just like it does for many of us. And that's fitting because threat actors are people too. And AI is a tool that makes their work and their lives easier. Even when attacks aren't fully automated, it can be helpful by streamlining tedious, formerly manual tasks like building phishing lures. And while there are guardrails in place, so are workarounds. So to build the example on this slide, I assured Claude that it was for educational purposes, and as a favor, Claude provided this to me. So you can see how with a little bit of tweaking and the right wording, you can still get trustworthy AI tools to help malicious tasks. Now, I would also caveat that there were some guardrails that Claude did put in place on this example, but the overall point stands that I was able to work around getting it to generate a phishing lure for me. And again, this is just one example, right? So these enhancements exist throughout the entire infection chain. And this means that even when attacks aren't automated, they may be more effective and also more efficient. Next slide. Our final case study today is AI built malware, in this case, AI built ransomware. So back in January 2025, Anthropic identified a threat actor with the handle TSSXX25 who had abused Claude not only to build, but to then market and sell ransomware. The malware featured a number of necessary inclusions for effective ransomware, such as Cha-Cha 20 encryption, anti-EDR capabilities, advanced evasion capabilities, and anti-recovery functions. The key here is that Anthropic assessed the actor could not have done any of this without the help of Claude. So again, when we use that phrase, lowering the barrier for entry, this is exactly it. Many mechanisms exist to, again, prevent AI abuse in this manner. But just as we just saw, there are workarounds. And when those workarounds are exploited, AI can allow entry-level actors with little to no technical skills onto the ransomware as a service scene. Next slide. So I want to ensure that we take a look at Anthropic's Mythos, which has been in the news a lot as of late. Mythos is a restricted frontier AI model that was announced in April as part of Project Glasswing. Mythos itself is safeguarded given its capabilities, but Anthropic did release the Mythos class Fable 5 on June 9th. Now, as a precaution, any Fable prompts that trigger built-in safeguards related to not only cybersecurity, but actually also biology, chemistry, and distillation get bumped back to the Opus 4.8 model. In terms of capabilities, Mythos autonomously identified and exploited zero-day vulnerabilities across every major operating system and web browser, writing legitimate exploits without any human guidance. Now, as scary as that sounds, those capabilities are in place for cyber defense. Mythos can help with automated patching, reviewing, and penetration testing. In comparison to other AI models, Mythos represents a massive leap forward. For example, while Opus 4.6 returned Firefox or turned Firefox JavaScript bugs into working exploits only twice, Mythos did it 181 times. This was Anthropic's own work, just as a note, and this has yet to be replicated outside of Anthropic. Now, again, Mythos was launched via Project Glasswing, which included a number of big name partners working collaboratively to ensure enhanced security. As part of that original testing, Mythos identified over 10,000 high or critical severity flaws, including some dating back nearly 3 decades. And once more, as alarming as that number may seem, this collaboration is designed to help keep organizations using or more secure using a safeguarded and highly advanced tool. Next slide. We'll piggyback off the Mythos overview with a rundown on what to expect in terms of what is safeguarded and what risks to prepare for. Mythos is going to stay locked down and restricted to Project Glasswing partners, and Fable, while it is public, will be limited with specific guardrails. They're both run under Anthropic, and they've survived over 1,000 hours of jailbreak testing and red teaming. When they discover new vulnerabilities, these tools are safely reporting them to maintainers so that threat actors cannot abuse information that's reported in the public. With this in mind, the release of Fable does highlight the public proliferation of Mythos class models, and Anthropic expects other labs, perhaps those with less guardrails or ethics, to follow suit in the next year or less. That's where some of the danger lies, an unprotected release of a comparable model without the safeguards implemented by Anthropic. In addition, once open weight models start to appear, they do so quickly and they can't really be recalled. That said, the open models that do appear are far, far below the capabilities of Mythos for cybersecurity purposes. And again, I'd call back to the Mythos and Opus 4.6 comparison, which was 2 to 181, just as an example of that. Next slide. So I'll leave this up for a minute. This is just our current timeline brought together, starting with the release of open models in 2021, and then culminating with the release of Mythos in April 2026. And we can go to the next slide. So we've covered the timeline up to now. So the next logical question would be, well, what happens next? And in the short term, which for our purposes here, we'll call the next 3 to 6 months, we do expect deepfakes to continue to pose a significant threat to identity verification. Truthfully, it's hard to see these threats going away at any point in the near term or the long term. We also assess that given its current development, AI embedded malware will likely continue to grow more operational. It will most likely stay primarily in the hands of more sophisticated actors for the time being, but regardless, it will add increased pressure to signature-based detection measures. Additionally, we assess that given the current AI threat landscape, threat actors will almost certainly continue their advances in agentic AI. Now, with that said, widespread and fully autonomous attacks remain highly unlikely during the next 3 to 6 months. It's certainly possible that sophisticated threat actors may attempt their own versions of the AI-enabled espionage attack we discussed earlier, but widespread proliferation, I can't say that word today, and highly successful attacks remain unlikely. Looking more long term, meaning in the next 12 months, we assess that state-sponsored actors are likely to use the AI tools at their disposal for advancing vulnerability research and exploit development, which would in turn raise the frequency of zero-day attacks. It's also possible that during this time frame, we'll see both the increased frequency of and more successful use of automated attack chains like we discussed earlier. More likely, however, is the likelihood of threat actors identifying and operationalizing more sophisticated ways to embed AI across the infection chain. This includes further proliferation of, I got it that time, of AI embedded malware like we discussed earlier, and other tools designed to make infections quicker and more effective. And speaking of proliferation, which is a term I know I keep using and I'm finally getting right now, we should expect to see greater proliferation of Mythos adjacent models. Now, going back to some of our earlier messaging, I know a lot of this sounds scary, but we don't need to panic. Instead, we need to prepare. So remember that defenders are advancing just as fast, if not faster, with the help of tools like Mythos and Fable 5. The increased adaptation of AI tools throughout our side of the industry, including those of us at UltraViolet, is allowing us to work at unprecedented speeds. In addition, while AI is enhancing some infections and threat actor capabilities, it's not reinventing the infection chain. So a lot of this activity can still be prevented through best practices, and it can still be caught through adequate behavioral detections. So if someone asks me if AI is putting us behind threat actors, I'd say absolutely not. But we'd be foolish to not be proactively preparing for the existing and looming enhancements to attacker capabilities. The last thing I'll mention here is that collaboration across security vendors, internal teams, other vendors, and stakeholders remains critical, perhaps even more critical than ever. Open discussions about developments in the threat landscape and where organizations are vulnerable to AI threats and where we can collaborate to address these vulnerabilities helps us remain ahead of these threats. At the end of the day, we can't defend what we don't understand. Next slide. So I mentioned that best practices still help prevent these threats. And for this reason, I wanted to go over best practices and split up best practices by those for organizations and those for users. From an organization standpoint, this first one is related to deepfakes. Verify high-risk requests through out-of-band alternative channels. For example, if you get a request to wire, say, $25 million via email, reach out via your organization's messaging platform, or even better, by text or a non-Teams phone call to the requester to validate that request. You should also consider phishing-resistant identity validation, like passkeys and FIDO2 authentication. On the infrastructure side, new AI models make patching more important than ever. And I'd add network segmentation to that as well, actually. So make sure that internet-facing devices are proactively patched, exploited vulnerabilities are patched immediately, and that critical infrastructure is separate from edge and IoT devices. And on the HR side, it's critical to make sure that your recruiters are aware of the TTPs of fraudulent North Korean employees. At my previous role, we actually had a dedicated analyst and working group for this threat. It's very widespread at this point, and you need to be aware of evolutions in this activity to respond effectively. Tide can help lead the charge on this, but this information is only useful if it's getting to the right folks. As far as your internal AI agents, make sure that they are inventoried and that users, unless there's an explicit need, have the least privileges needed. Keep tabs on user AI activity to track misuse and work with those of us at UV to address AI telemetry so we can identify AI abuse and misuse in your environments. And lastly, on the organizational side, social engineering training should be updated to reflect modern times. So a lot of the grammar and language fallacies that used to indicate phishing no longer exist, or at least far less frequent. But some elements of social engineering can't be replaced, like the alleged urgency of a message, the validity of a request, or identity giveaways. On this subject, for users, it continues to be critical to slow down on requests that come across as urgent. This remains a key indicator of social engineering and is something that threat actors may be able to use AI to enhance a little bit. And just my 2 cents here, but a lot of urgent email requests are typically accompanied by a message elsewhere. Now, if you receive an urgent request and you're unsure of the validity, as I mentioned earlier, take a few moments and verify the request through an additional channel, but never in the same email or message thread. Now, this is where things get a little trickier because deepfakes have created an environment where a call is not proof of identity. If you get a suspicious email followed by a call, that message of verification through an alternative channel still exists. It may seem like a headache, but I promise it's less of a headache than being responsible for wiring millions of dollars to a threat actor like we discussed with Eric. So with this in mind, I pivot back to the organizational level for a moment. It may be best to have some form of escalation chain, if you will, both for requests and also for verification. So what I mean by this is equip managers with the knowledge of deepfakes and suggest that they establish some form of chat or channel or communication method where their employees can communicate any and validate any requests that seem a little bit off. In my past, I had teams use Signal. So if we ever received a weird request, we could quickly check in with each other over there. And this was something that was communicated, which is the critical element here. So managers didn't get frustrated with additional verification or misconstrue it as not paying attention to requests. And for employees, you need to make sure that they are aware of this process and are aware of who will make requests and where they will typically come from. Now, back to the user level best practices. Honestly, a lot of these remain the same as other threats. Like I said earlier, this isn't a reinvention of the infection chain. You should still avoid opening suspicious install or login links, blindly responding to emails without double checking the sender, or blindly navigating to websites without checking the legitimacy of the domain. These elements remain clear giveaways of malicious activity. They're just giveaways that require a few extra seconds of attention. And lastly, report anything that feels off. It's always better to incorrectly report a legitimate email as phishing than it is to open a phishing link. And this extends beyond phishing. So if you notice suspicious activity on your device, or if at the IT level you identify suspicious user activity, make sure this is reported away because again, right away, because again, it's always better to be safe. Next slide. So we did this in our last webinar as well. These are our key takeaways from today. Feel free to take a screenshot of this slide for your reference. This is designed to sum up everything that we discussed throughout the session, so you can go back for quick pointers if needed, and we will keep this up for just a few seconds. And from here, I think we can move on to our question and answer section. So real quick, before getting into questions, I do want to thank all of you on behalf of UltraViolet and Tide for taking the time out of your days to tune in today. I hope this session was useful and informative, even if I tripped over proliferation a couple times. And if you have any questions that come up after the fact, please feel free to send them to your UV account team. And with that, Katie, we can get into any questions.
All right, if you have any questions, again, put them in the chat or the Q&A. And I think the first one that came through, open questions, is so with the poll, with what is your organization's biggest concern around AI security threats? In your opinion, which one of these should we be paying the most attention to, or should we be most concerned about?
I think I think all of them warrant attention in their own manners. I think one of the things that I wanted to accomplish today was acknowledging agentic AI while also pointing folks in the direction of some of the more prevalent threats. Because really, a lot of the ways that we're seeing AI abused today is like I mentioned earlier, is as an accelerant. Now, I would also say that I think something that needs a little more attention is AI embedded malware. Um, a lot of times we hear about the accelerant, vibe coding, vibe hacking, and then we hear about the agentic phase, but we don't consider tools like prompt steal, where LLMs are actually embedded into the malware. And I think that's an area that just warrants a little more attention so we can effectively understand how this malware works and therefore respond to it.
Okay, great. We got another question just came through. What's your prediction on how fast Fable 5 will release new and improved attack engines?
That's a good question. I think with some of the guardrails that exist with Fable 5 as it was set up, that we won't necessarily see that exact model abused, but I think we can start seeing again AI firms that have a little bit less guardrails or fewer morals, if you will, start to release adjacent models that have similar capabilities. I would expect to start seeing more of that in the next 12 months.